Why you want to listen to this episode, help it break it down? Because we have 2012 presidential candidate, the host of Newt's World, Gingrich 360. It's a podcast. And the host of the Domenech podcast. He's also the Fox News contributor, editor-at-large of The Spectator, and the editor of The Transom, Ben Domenech. Gentlemen, great to have you here on the Will Cain Show. Ben, and for that matter, Newt, I don't know. We should have had you in the Fantasy Football League. Newt, are you I don't know. You're a sports guy, Newt, right?
Well,
he's a Steelers fan.
We have a share of Green Bay stock, so we have a vested interest. And Sao Paulo was tough.
Oh, you're a Green Bay Packers fan. But Newt, you're from – now, I have a lot of really strong opinions, and I judge character harshly on this type of thing. You're from Georgia. Give me an excuse for you being a fan of the Green Bay Packers.
Because it's America's team.
When I was a graduate
what is it,
student,
Newt?
my closest friend in graduate school was a Dallas Cowboy fan. And every year I got a case of beer off of him, thanks to Vince Lombardi.
Where was this in school? Where did you go to school?
That's at Tulane. He and I were both
Tulane. Oh.
It was a tough life.
I would have liked to have seen 20. Yeah, I was going to say, I'd like to see 20-something-year-old Newt, Green Bay Packers fan, America's team roommate in the streets of Bourbon Street in New Orleans. That's a different. I don't know if he's different. It's a different image than the. It's different than the 2012 presidential candidate.
I turned down Duke and a variety of other schools when Tulane made an offer because I wanted to live in New Orleans, and I was right.
Of course,
it was great.
I think you were. Little people don't realize this. Duke is just a northeastern school situated in the South. It's full of New Yorkers, and that's nothing wrong with that. But that's just what it is. All right, Newt Gingrich, Ben Domenech here on the Will Cain Show. Ben, with all due respect, I am going to start with the guy that ran for the president. Sat on this debate stage.
Look, I read Domenech's transcript every morning. You can ask Ben first. I read all of his stuff.
So I don't. Oh, so you're just going to repeat stuff that Ben's already written? I don't want to hear that. Yes. And I don't think it's true. Newt, you jumped on. They told me when you jumped on the Zoom, so you might have not heard my monologue, my lead up to bringing you guys in. I think this is really tough for Trump. And I don't think it's easy for Kamala Harris. I think it's tough debating a woman. I think it's tough trying to put her on the defensive without coming off like a bully. What do you think about tonight and the strategy for Donald Trump?
I think Trump is the best debater I've ever seen. I mean, including Reagan. I think Trump's intuitive skills, I'm always very cautious in advising him on debates because his instinct, I mean, look at how he demolished Jeb Bush or go down the list. Look how he handled, people talk about him debating a woman. He debated Hillary. Hillary was a thug, and so he could be much tougher. Kamala's not a Hillary quality thug. So he's got to be a little more careful. On the other hand, look at how he calmly and pleasantly allowed Joe Biden to destroy himself in June. I mean, the more disciplined Trump was, the more Biden destroyed himself. So I have no idea which version of Trump will show up tonight, but I do know that while he doesn't do this hide in Pittsburgh preparation stuff, he has been preparing for this for 6 or 8 weeks, all day, every day. He's been thinking, does this work? Does that work? If I do this, what will she do? I'm looking forward tonight. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. But I think,
one more for you, Newt. One more for you, Newt. So I totally respect, I like what you have to say about his instincts because it's true. And I've been with Donald Trump. He told me about some of the advice that he got in debate prep in 2016. And the truth is the advice wouldn't have been good. And he just did what was instinctual for him, and it worked. And I appreciate and respect that. But you've been in there. Do you think Donald Trump, we know, all three of us have probably been around Donald Trump to some extent to know I know he cares what people think, meaning he asks you what you think often. And he'll ask a common person as much as an expert what they think about the steak at Bedminster, about this, about that. He cares. Do you think he'll care, like in debate prep, to your point, like if somebody says, now, Mr. President, if you do it that way, you're coming off as really abrasive to Tulsi Gabbard standing in for Kamala Harris. That's who's playing the role of Kamala Harris. And we have polling over here, or we have a Frank Luntz type figure saying it plays poorly. What do you? Is it in Donald Trump? Like he hears that, he listens to that, and goes, "Okay, how can I adjust going into the debate?"
I think the guy who did 13 years of The Apprentice thinks he has a pretty good notion of what TV audience is like, and I think he listens to everybody. He puts it through this extraordinary brain of his, and he intuits what he should do. And I mean, look, he and I have exactly the same debate prep model. When we had our first debate with Fox in 2012, Calista and I got Diet Cokes and watched Bridesmaids. That was my debate prep. I know exactly why. I know exactly why he's not flying into the last minute, because he doesn't want to get tense. He doesn't want to think about it.
Right.
You know, he wants to.
Right.
He has a lifetime of preparation. He doesn't have to study who is Kim Jong-un or, what is Putin like. I mean, she has never done anything except be a lawyer. She was a lawyer as a DA. She was a lawyer as an attorney general. She behaved like a lawyer in the Senate. She's never run anything. Trump has a lifetime of experience, and I suspect he's kind of looking forward to this, and we'll see. And I think he will intuit what the ABC reporters are like and what she is like, and in his own head, he'll have a model of the notional American watching the debate, and he will behave in a way designed to move that person to dismiss Kamala as a possibility.
So, Ben, did you write all that in the transom this morning? Did he just regurgitate what you've written already?
No, I wouldn't pretend to. Obviously, Newt has way more experience on the debate stage than I do, but I have done a good bit of debate prep over the years. And what I would be saying to the former president right now is restraint. Use virtually the same approach that you had to that June debate, because the reality for us in this moment as Americans is that the people who are going to decide this election haven't really decided who Kamala Harris is yet. And I think that if she has some pretty basic questions given to her, then I think that she is going to tie herself into knots. It's not going to be the same degradation that we saw from Joe Biden, but it's going to be something that I think is not going to be advantageous to her campaign. We've already seen her momentum stall. We've already seen the fact that this convention didn't result in any significant bump for her. The polls are effectively tied. And I think that if ABC's moderators do anything approaching their job, certainly I think we were pleasantly surprised at the way that CNN approached this, of asking basic questions that matter to the American people about the economy, about security, about the border, about foreign policy, then I think she's going to be put into a really tough position. Now, for the former president, I think you're right, Will. He needs to avoid coming across as nasty, as bullying, as aggressive, or anything along those lines. Part of the disadvantage for him is I know this is sort of a silly thing, but he's almost a foot taller than Kamala Harris. They're going to be on stage together in a way that they haven't been before. And so the danger optically is coming across as if you are badgering someone or something like that. And I think that that's the real thing he just needs to avoid. If he gives
that's interesting, Ben, the visual.
Yeah.
That's interesting, the visual. In their rule, Ben, in the past, they've said we've never had a president under a certain height, and but we've only ever really analyzed that through the prism of men. I've never thought about that as applied to women. How tall is Kamala Harris?
Kamala Harris is 5'5" in heels, so that's it's quite a bit of a difference.
I think she's actually 5'4".
Yeah,
I think she says she's 5'4".
Well, everybody gives himself an inch. Everybody gives themselves an inch, Newt.
Well,
the NFL Combine. You know the way this works. But
if you looked at her last appearance with Biden, where Biden puts his arm around her, she leans up against him and closes her eyes and is resting her head on his shoulder. She looks like she's the teenage girl he's comforting. I mean, it's not a shot I would have wanted if I were her managers.
Well, but I also think
go ahead, Ben.
One of the things that we are going to run into here is just the basic problem of if you are the bigger guy on stage optically, it just looks like you're being way more aggressive than you are. And I think that that's the thing that he needs to avoid, because because you can see there's so many different ways for him to challenge her, so many questions that he could put to her. But I think he just needs to have an approach that's restrained and that's serious, and that depicts himself as the candidate of seriousness and change, and her as the candidate of this is the last 4 years, except dumber and stupider and more unreliable.
All he's got to do is answer if Sanders was right on Sunday when Sanders said she was pretending to give up her beliefs to get through the election. He just has to say, do you agree with Bernie Sanders?
We just talked about that.
Accurate?
So a couple of quick thoughts on what you guys have said so far. So, Ben, I love that you brought out the visual. And Newt, you'll know this better than me. And I can't remember who said it, but I've often quoted, it's been attributed to Ronald Reagan's communication advisor that it's 70% how you look, 20% how you sound, and only 10% what you have to say. So I love, Ben, that you bring up the importance of the visual aspect of it. Newt, you brought up that he's done it in the past with a woman, with Hillary, and I appreciate that. You even put the caveat in there. I just think Hillary's different. She's so unlikable that you could be as aggressive as you wanted, and Kamala's just not on that same level of unlikability. But my question to you, Newt, will be, my buddy Pete Hegseth pointed this out. They put answers at 2 minutes, and Pete was like, that's a long time. And that plays to Donald Trump's advantage to make Kamala speak extemporaneously for 2 minutes.
Well, it's a huge disadvantage for Trump. I mean, the idea of a 2-minute answer is so constricting that his natural length is 7 to 12 minutes. So he's going to have to really edit himself to be down at 2.
Right.
And I'll bet he gets cut off a couple of times during the evening because he just starts rolling.
Right.
You know, and when he's rolling,
right.
You know, time flies when you're having fun. I just want to make a point that I used to make back before the Biden-Trump debate in June. The debate's important, particularly for those of us who care about politics, although I noticed this morning only 44% of the American people are aware that there's a presidential debate. 56% of the country does not know what's going on. And that's because politics is not that central to most people's lives. But here's the point I made before the June debate. 2 days after the debate, people will go to the grocery store and they will remember that the Biden-Harris program raised the price of beef 26% since they got in office, raised the price of gasoline, raised the price of everything. And they'll be back where they were. And Trump's base is around 48 or 49%. And that's after everything they've done to him. Her base is actually around 42. And people just don't realize it yet. But if you really look at the underlying value questions, she's at about 42. And she's got a real problem because the people she's currently getting that are the extra 6 or 8 don't know who she is. Mm-hmm. And the more they start learning who she is, this is Dukakis and McGovern all over again.
So can I just point out one more thing that I think is
remember,
really
Dukakis was up 17 points. 17 points coming out of the Democratic convention. She was up either 1 or 2. And if you're a Democrat in the Electoral College, if you're not up at least 4, you're losing because all your whole margin is California. In California, I mean, once you carry California, and the next 100,000 or 500,000 votes is irrelevant. And that's why I knew Hillary would lose, because her margin in California and New York was so big, and Illinois. Those are the three places you get the huge national margin. And frankly, if we went to a popular vote model, Republicans would advertise in those 3 states, and they'd get a much bigger vote. So there's a certain misleading notion that we don't do well in certain places. We don't even show up anymore. We say, fine, you get an extra 500,000 there. We'll take the Electoral College.
Ben?
Which is why, of course, they want to get rid of it. The point that I wanted to make that I find to be very interesting going into this debate, Will, is Pew is out with their latest round. They do these sort of scheduled rounds of massive polls that they do that look at different issues. And what they found in terms of priorities, voter priorities, is that obviously the same consistent thing has happened here, where we've got the economy, immigration, and then security concerns, which are sort of, either, domestically crime or foreign policy wise, instability around the world. These issues have been the top, and they've been consistently the top for 2 years now. The interesting thing to me about the Pew poll was that while Kamala Harris has an advantage on the abortion issue, it's a much smaller advantage than I think people would realize. It's 55 to 44, which actually says to me that's a huge problem for her. If she wants this to be a culture war election where there's going to be some kind of sweeping youth vote that's going to come in and elevate her, some kind of effectively the repeat of the 2022 cycle in many ways. That's not what is developing in front of us right now. What is developing in front of us right now is an election that's about fundamentals. Trump is really good when it comes to these fundamental issues. I think the more that he sticks to that, the better. And in terms of the kind of radical nature that Newt was just talking about, Dukakis, McGovern, et cetera, I don't know if you've seen it, but the visual of Aaron Burnett expressing shock that Kamala Harris endorsed transgender surgery for illegal migrants. She actually did that. Yes, she actually did. She took all these crazy positions. My only question is going to be, are these moderators going to ask any of the questions about this? Like, do you still believe?
I think that's why Aaron Burnett resonated, because it was such a rarity. No, they won't.
Yeah, I think that they will avoid those. But that to me means that Trump is going to have to find ways to bring those up, to basically establish
himself.
I am the candidate of the economy, of the border, of security at home and around the world. And she is the candidate of crazy, loony, lefty, Berkeley ideas. She may pretend to be from Oakland, but she's from Berkeley.
Well, let me suggest a real-time, real-life, what could become the biggest symbol of the campaign, and that's Springfield, Ohio. Springfield has 20,000 Haitian refugees. It is collapsing as a city. And if Springfield and to a lesser extent Aurora, Colorado, which has a Venezuelan gang that is literally on TV with guns breaking into an apartment, those are the kind of things that suddenly the country says enough. And I think if that sinks in, and the question becomes, vote Harris and get more Springfield, bring Springfield to your town. You too could have 50,000 refugees, thanks to Kamala. That truly sinks in. This will be much closer to a Dukakis or McGovern race.
Yeah, we broke that down yesterday, that story. In fact, we're going to revisit it again today in the third segment with Outkick's Bobby Burke, the story of Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. All right, I know Ben has to go, I don't know if he has to record something or pick up a child, but he's got to go at 12:30 Eastern time. And Newt has all kinds of important things to do, like perhaps record the Newt's World Gingrich 360 podcast. Also, while you're there, subscribe to the Ben Domenech podcast. I really appreciate you guys hopping on and doing this with us today in advance of the debate. Thank you, Newt. Thank you, Ben.
Take care.